Welcome to Sleep with Myth. Close your eyes and let the world fade away. Tonight we drift beyond time, where gods dream and stories remember their light. There is a village that lives forever at the edge of dusk. In the morning, its roofs are brushed by gentle light that never quite becomes harsh day. In the evening, its lanterns glow with a warmth that never quite sinks into full, devouring night. The people who live there do not measure time by clocks or calendars. They measure it by the color of the sky, by the length of the shadows, by the way the wind remembers the mountains when it passes through their doorways. On the highest slope above this village, where the last houses lean into the rising hills, there is a little home with a crooked roof and a wooden step worn smooth by many feet. In that house lives a girl who has always seen shadows a little differently from everyone else. Her name is Aiko. Aiko's hair is the color of ink diluted with water, soft and dark, and her eyes seem to hold a permanent twilight. Neither fully day nor fully night, but something between. When she walks through the village, the stray cats follow her, and the crows on the temple roof tilt their heads as if they recognize her as one of their own. Children whisper that she was born on the boundary between worlds, on a night when the moon hid its face and the stars turned their ears toward the mountains. Aiko's grandmother, who raised her, only smiles when she hears such talk. From the time she was small, Aiko loved shadows. While other children chased the bright moths around lanterns or skipped stones on the river, she would sit quietly at the edge of the path and watch the long shapes cast by trees and people. She noticed how shadows stretched when the sun grew low, how they curled politely when lanterns were lit, and how they shivered when clouds moved across the sky. Most people thought shadows were just the absence of light. Aiko suspected they were something else entirely. One evening, when she was very young, she sat on the threshold of her grandmother's house, swinging her feet above the worn wooden step. The sun was melting behind the mountain ridge, and the world seemed to be breathing slower, deeper. Aiko watched the shadow of the house grow longer and longer, stretching down the path like a soft, dark blanket. Without really thinking why, she whispered, "Does it hurt when you stretch that far?" To her surprise, the shadow seemed to tremble gently, like a cat being scratched in a favorite place. Aiko blinked. "Did you answer me?" she asked, more curious than afraid. The shadow shifted again, not with the movement of light, but in a way that felt deliberate, almost shy. It curled around her bare toes as if to say, "We hear you." From that evening on, shadows always seemed a little more alive around her. When she walked along the road at dusk, the silhouettes of bamboo and houses and people would lean slightly nearer. In the rice fields, the slender shadows of the stalks would ripple and arrange themselves in patterns that matched her thoughts. In the temple courtyard, the stone lanterns' shadows bowed to her when she passed, perfectly polite. Aiko did not tell anyone at first. It felt like a secret between her and the world, a quiet understanding spoken in a language without words. But children are not very good at keeping secrets they do not understand, and one day, while helping her grandmother hang herbs to dry, Aiko asked, "Oba-chan, are shadows alive?" Her grandmother paused, a bundle of mugwort in her wrinkled hands. The air smelled of earth and smoke and something a little bitter, like unspoken stories. "Why do you ask?" the old woman said gently. "They answer me," Aiko replied simply. not with voices, but with listening. Her grandmother studied her carefully, her eyes dark and deep. Then she nodded, slowly, as if acknowledging something she had long expected and quietly hoped would never arrive. Once, she said, people knew how to speak to many things, to rivers, to stones, to wind, to shadows. But the world grew loud, and the quiet languages were forgotten. She reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind Aiko's ear. You must be careful. Creatures who are forgotten for a long time can become lonely, and loneliness can be a sharp hunger. Aiko frowned, not afraid, but thoughtful. Are shadows hungry? Her grandmother smiled sadly. Everything that listens is hungry for something. From that night, Aiko paid even closer attention. When she walked past the old shrine at the edge of the village, the one everyone said was haunted by a mountain spirit, she noticed how its shadow did not behave like other shadows. The carved wooden roof and faded paper charms should have cast a shape that leaned politely along the path. Instead, the shrine's shadow seemed to sink more deeply into the ground than it should, as if part of it were not on the surface at all. Sometimes, when the mist rolled down from the mountain and swallowed the trees, the shrine's shadow would grow thicker instead of thinner, outlined not by light, but by absence. One evening, on the first night of autumn, Aiko lingered outside the shrine while the others hurried home. The air had the crispness of bitten apples, and a faint chill curled in the leaves. "Why are you always different?" she whispered to the shrine's shadow. This time, the darkness at her feet did something unmistakable. Turned. Not the way a person turns their head or body, but the way awareness does, a slow, deliberate swiveling of attention. Aiko felt it fix on her like an unseen gaze. The hair on her arms stood up, but not from fear. It felt like standing at the edge of a question that had been waiting for an answer. "You hear me?" she said quietly. The shadow elongated, stretching up the stone base of the shrine and along the faded wooden door. It stopped just short of the paper talismans hanging there, as if respecting a boundary it could cross but chose not to. Aiko swallowed. "Do you want something?" The answer came not as words, but as a feeling old, vast, and patient. It was like standing under a mountain and realizing that it had been listening to every footstep, every whispered secret, every prayer, for longer than anyone could remember. The feeling was this, "Come higher." Aiko stepped back. She glanced toward the mountain, whose slopes rose behind the village like the back of a sleeping dragon. The peaks were already dark, their outlines softened by mist. The villagers often told stories of what lived up there. Fox spirits that played tricks, ogres with lantern eyes, wandering ghosts, and, whispered in the quietest voices, Yamamba, the mountain who ate the unwary and stole children who wandered too far from home. Aiko's grandmother always scoffed at the crueler versions of the tale. "Yamamba does not eat children," she would say while spooning rice into bowls. "People forget their manners, their promises, their gratitude, and then blame witches when the mountain reminds them of the cost. That is all." But even she made sure the doors were well barred on nights when the clouds sank low and the moon vanished. Now, standing before the shrine, Aiko felt the shadow's invitation again. Not a command, not a threat, a pull gentle and deep, like the tug of river water around your ankles when you stand too long on a stepping stone. "Come higher." it seemed to murmur. Come where the quiet is strong enough to hear you back. That night Aiko dreamed. In her dream, she walked alone along the mountain path, lantern in hand, the flame trembling like a tiny, brave heart. The trees rose tall on either side, and their shadows stretched away from the lantern's light. But instead of running from her, the shadows leaned together, joining into long, soft currents that flowed alongside her like rivers. "Where are we going?" she asked the dark swirling at her feet. "To the one who taught us how to listen," came the answer, not from a single voice, but from a chorus of whispers. Old, young, gentle, sharp, all woven together. To the mother of forgotten paths. Aiko's heart shook, but she kept walking. The mist thickened, silver and slow, wrapping itself around the branches. The lantern's light became a small halo floating in a sea of gray. Then ahead there was a shape, not towering, not monstrous. Just a hut, crooked and quiet, built where no hut should be, on a narrow ledge of rock overlooking nothing but fog. A figure sat in front of it, combing her long hair with a bone comb. Her hair fell like a shadow down her back, black and heavy, yet it moved as if it contained the night sky itself. Her kimono was the color of dried leaves, stitched with faint, crawling patterns like the veins of mountains seen from far above. Her face, when she raised it, was neither old nor young. It was simply something that had watched many seasons and had grown tired of counting. "You came," the woman said. Aiko stopped, the lantern trembling in her hand. "Are you Yamamba?" she asked, because in dreams she was brave enough to say what she would never dare in waking life. The woman laughed softly, a sound like snow sliding from a branch. "Yamamba," she repeated. "Mountain mother, mountain witch, mountain shadow. People cut me into many names when one frightens them. You may call me what the shadows call me." She tilted her head, listening to the darkness flowing around Aiko's feet. "Tonight, they call me the one who remembers your voice." Aiko's throat tightened. "Why?" "Because you spoke to them," Yamamba said simply, "and did not demand anything in return." The lantern flame fluttered. The mist sighed. The shadows around Aiko curled closer, as if leaning in to catch every word. "Many come to the mountain," Yamamba continued, setting the bone comb in her lap. "They ask for things. Fortune, power, revenge, safe passage. They pour their wants into the quiet and never stay long enough to hear what the mountain wants. But you, little dusk child, you asked if the shadows hurt when they stretch." Aiko flushed. "I just wondered," she murmured. "Everything else seemed to have feelings. And so, the shadows brought you to me," Yamamba said. She lifted her hand, and the darkness around the hut thickened, then thinned, like breath. Aiko realized that the woman's shadow did not behave like other shadows either. It did not lie flat along the ground. It rose and fell around her like a cloak of night, folding and unfolding with her breathing. "What do you want from me?" Aiko asked, trying to make her voice steady. Yamamba's eyes, dark and deep, softened. "To listen," she said, "and to learn what you will become when you hear all the things the world has tried to say and no one else will hear." Aiko hesitated. The mountain wind brushed past her ears, cool and strong, carrying the smell of snow and moss and secrets kept by stone. "What if I am afraid?" she whispered. Yamamba smiled, and for a moment, the fear in Aiko's chest loosened. Then your fear will learn to listen too, the witch said. Fear that listens does not devour. It guards. The shadows at Aiko's feet shifted, gathering themselves like loyal dogs waiting for a command. Yamamba rose slowly, her hair flowing behind her like a living river of night. Come back to me, she said, her voice echoing as if it were being spoken from the bottom of a well and from very close by at the same time. Come when the mist is low and the sky forgets its color. I will teach you how to speak to what others cannot bear to see. And in return, she paused, the air tightening around her words. In return, you will help me remember something I have almost forgotten. Aiko opened her mouth to ask what that was, but the dream cracked open like ice underfoot. She woke with a start, the sound of her own breath loud in the small room. The first light of morning, soft, pale, and hesitant, threaded through the paper screens. Her grandmother snored faintly in the next room, the old woman's dreams full of fields and old songs. Aiko lay still, listening. Outside, she could hear the village waking. Roosters crowing, buckets clattering, the river gossiping over its stones. But underneath it all, she heard something else, the low, patient murmur of the mountain, like a story being told just out of earshot. At the edge of her futon, the shadows pooled a little thicker than they should have in the morning light. She sat up slowly. Was it only a dream? She whispered. The shadow at her feet stretched and curled around her toes. Not cold, not warm, just present. It did not answer with a voice. It did not need to. In its movement, in the way it held its shape around her, Aiko felt the same invitation she had felt at the shrine. Come higher. Come where the quiet is strong enough to hear you back. Aiko looked toward the thin paper wall that separated her from the day. Beyond it lay the village, and beyond the village, the path that wound up into mist and pine and rumor. She took a slow, steady breath. Then, she said softly, touching the floor with her fingertips as if greeting a friend, when dusk comes, I will go. The shadows rippled, pleased, and far above the village, unseen in the bright, distracted hours of morning, something old and watchful on the mountain opened its eyes and smiled, very slowly. It had been a long time since anyone had come willingly to speak with shadows. And this time it thought, as the wind carried Aiko's name up through the trees, this time the story might end differently. The village at the edge of dusk went about its day, unaware. But as the sun traced its slow arc and began its descent, the shadows grew longer in a way that felt almost expectant, as if the whole world were leaning forward, waiting for the girl who spoke to them to answer back. Dusk settled over the village with the softness of falling silk, painting the surviving light in shades of amber and pale rose. Aiko stood at the edge of the path that wound upward into the mountain, her small lantern held against her chest. Its flame flickered like a nervous heartbeat, casting a warm circle of trembling gold around her sandals. Her grandmother was asleep inside the house, unaware of Aiko's decision. Aiko had waited until the woman's breaths grew deep, the kind that came only with dreams shaped by decades of living and seasons of loss. Once certain, Aiko slipped from the futon, wrapped herself in a dark indigo shawl, and stepped out into the evening air. Shadows gathered instantly, not in a threatening way, more like curious companions. They curled around her feet, stretching and retreating like waves testing the shore. "You're coming too?" she whispered. The shadows didn't answer. They didn't need to. Her question had always been rhetorical. The lantern's flame steadied, as if bracing itself. Aiko began walking. The path up the mountain was older than the village itself. It twisted between cedars whose trunks rose like the pillars of forgotten temples. Moss-covered stones poked through the soil like ancient bones. The air grew cooler, scented faintly with pine, wet stone, and something else. Something metallic and faint, like the smell that lingers after thunder. As she walked, Aiko noticed the shadows around her growing longer, darker, deeper. But they were not frightening. They moved with intention, reorganizing themselves into shapes that guided rather than followed. At one bend in the path, a cluster of shadows shifted into the distinct outline of a crow with spread wings. "Turn here?" Aiko asked. The crow-shaped darkness nodded without moving its head. Aiko stepped into the dimmer trail. The deeper she went, the quieter everything became. Crickets fell silent. Leaves stilled. Even the usual distant rush of the river faded until the only sound was her own breath. "Why does it feel like the world is holding itself still?" she murmured. The shadows at her feet rippled, forming the impression of a mouth that whispered, "You are being expected." Aiko's fingers tightened around the lantern. She felt no impulse to turn back. The mist arrived without warning. One moment the trees stood clear and sharp against the twilight. The next, everything was smudged by a silver-gray veil. The mist curled around her ankles first, cool as river water. Then it climbed, swallowing the lantern's glow until the flame seemed trapped inside a bubble of gold drifting through cloud. Aiko hesitated. "Will I lose the path?" The shadows reassured her by gathering around the edges of the trail. They moved like liquid, forming a dark boundary on both sides so she wouldn't stray. "Thank you," she whispered. "We listen," the shadows murmured back. The trail climbed higher, narrowing into an uneven stone stairway carved into the mountain itself. As she ascended, the mist thickened enough that droplets formed on her hair and eyelashes. The lantern flame shrank under the moisture, but still held on, much like her. Halfway up the stairs, the wind changed. It no longer smelled of wet cedar and soil. Instead, it carried something far older, a scent like earth that has never been touched by sunlight. Aiko recognized it from her dream. Yamamba. A figure emerged ahead. At first, Aiko thought it was only a darker patch of mist. Then the outline grew sharper, the shape of a woman sitting on a jutting stone ledge that overlooked the valley. Her hair was long, trailing like night water down her back. She wore the same leaf-colored kimono Aiko had seen in the dream. Yamamba did not move as Aiko approached. Yamamba did not move as Aiko approached. She simply existed, as though the mountain had grown her instead of trees and stone. "You came," Yamamba said without turning her head. Aiko bowed, unsure what manners applied when greeting a mountain witch. I followed the shadows." "They follow you," Yamamba corrected. "That is why the mountain listens." Her voice was gentle, but beneath the gentleness lay a dangerous weight, an authority older than language. Aiko swallowed. "Why did you call me here?" Yamamba finally looked at her then. Her eyes were vast, too vast. Not frightening, but deep enough to fall into. In them Aiko saw winter storms moving through valleys, saw fields dying and being reborn, saw humanity forgetting and remembering itself in cycles like the moon. "You are a child of dusk," Yamamba said softly, "between light and shadow, between sound and silence, between worlds that pretend they do not see each other." Aiko did not understand fully, but she felt the truth brush her skin in a shiver. "You can hear what others cannot bear to notice," the witch continued, "and that makes you a bridge." "A bridge to what?" Aiko asked. "To everything the living fear." Aiko stepped back without meaning to. Yamamba raised a hand in reassurance. "Fear is not an enemy when it is acknowledged," she said. "But silenced fear becomes hunger, the kind that devours." "Is that why the shadows listen to me?" Aiko asked. "No," Yamamba smiled faintly, just enough to make the mist tremble. "The shadows listen to you because you listen to them. Most people see only danger in what they do not understand. You see possibility." Aiko lowered her lantern. The flame flickered, casting light across Yamamba's face. The witch's shadow stretched behind her. Not like a normal shadow would, but like a living thing, shifting independently. Aiko's gaze lingered on the shadow. "Why did you bring me here?" Yamamba stood slowly. When she rose, her hair flowed down like a waterfall of darkness. "I brought you here," she said, "because the mountain is changing." "Changing how?" Aiko whispered. Yamamba walked past her, her bare feet silent on the stone. "The shadows have begun speaking too loudly," she said. "The old spirits are waking. Paths that should remain forgotten are remembering themselves." Aiko followed her gaze. Far above, deeper into the mountain, the mist pulsed. Not drifted, pulsed, like a sleeping heartbeat. "What does it mean?" she asked. "That something long sealed is stirring," Yamamba said. "And when the sleeping thing rises, it will seek a voice." She turned to Aiko, the mist swirling around her like a second kimono. "A voice like yours." Aiko heard her own heartbeat in her ears. "You want me to stop it?" "No," Yamamba said. "I want you to understand it. Because if you do not, those who fear it will destroy what they cannot comprehend. And destruction of the forgotten breeds curses." She stepped closer, her presence cold and warm at once. "The shadows trust you. They will help you go where I cannot." "Why can't you?" Yamamba looked away, and for the first time, Aiko saw sorrow in her ancient eyes. "Because I am part of the mountain," she said, "and some doors do not open for those who helped build them." The mist thickened until even Yamamba's silhouette blurred. "You will go on alone," the witch said, "but not unprotected." She reached into the folds of her kimono and withdrew a small object, a comb carved from bone, the same one Aiko had seen in her dream. She placed it in Aiko's hands. "Shadows respect what remembers them," Yamamba said. "Use this if the darkness grows too loud. It will remind them of silence." Aiko held the comb tightly, felt heavier than bone, heavy with meaning. "What will I find?" she whispered. Yamamba stepped back, merging slowly into the mist. "A truth," she said, "one that has been waiting for you longer than you have been alive." Her form dissolved, leaving only her voice behind. Go higher, dusk child. The mountain is awake. Then she was gone. Aiko stood alone on the stone ledge, lantern trembling in her hands. Above her, the path narrowed into darkness. Below her, the village lights appeared through the fog, tiny stars clinging desperately to the world of the living. The shadows around her curled gently, nudging her forward. Aiko swallowed once, raised the lantern, and stepped onto the hidden path leading deeper into the mist. And the mountain exhaled. Dusk settled over the village with the softness of falling silk, painting the surviving light in shades of amber and pale rose. Aiko stood at the edge of the path that wound upward into the mountain, her small lantern held against her chest. Its flame flickered like a nervous heartbeat, casting a warm circle of trembling gold around her sandals. Her grandmother was asleep inside the house, unaware of Aiko's decision. Aiko had waited until the woman's breaths grew deep, the kind that came only with dreams shaped by decades of living and seasons of loss. Once certain, Aiko slipped from the futon, wrapped herself in a dark indigo shawl, and stepped out into the evening air. Shadows gathered instantly, curious, expectant, swirling around her ankles like loyal but restless spirits. "You're coming too?" she whispered. The shadows did not answer, but their shapes stretched forward, eager. Aiko began walking. The path grew steeper, the cedars older, the silence deeper. Soon, even the river's distant roar faded. A hush settled over the forest, too complete to be natural. Then Aiko heard it, a rustle, a breath, a whisper, not from the trees, not from the wind, from the shadows. They moved with intention, reorganizing into shapes she recognized from her dreams. Birds, hands, a fox, a human face. Guiding her, the path forked. One side climbed into cold darkness, the other descended into a faint glow of red. Aiko hesitated. Which way? The shadow split, half left, half right. "You want me to choose?" Her fear tugged left, so she followed it. The hollow of forgotten names. The trees here leaned inward sharply, forming a tunnel of black bark and green veins glowing faintly under the mist. The air was heavier, thicker, like a held breath. Then she saw it, a shape ahead, tall, thin, still, a shadow in the shape of a man or something once human. Aiko raised her lantern. The light slid across the figure without revealing a face. The figure pointed downward. Aiko knelt. Names were carved into the earth. Hundreds, thousands maybe, etched in different scripts, different eras. "These are people?" she whispered. The shadow hummed, a sound like grief buried under centuries. "Forgotten people." Aiko touched the nearest name. Warmth pulsed beneath her fingertips, distant, aching. "You're not forgotten anymore," she whispered. The shadow bowed deeply, then dissolved into the ground. Aiko swallowed. A test. The shadows at her feet rippled. Approval. The heart of embers. She returned to the fork and took the right path. The forest warmed. Red pulses lit the roots beneath her feet. A hum vibrated through the soil. Clearing opened. At its center lay a giant obsidian heart, wrapped in glowing roots, each pulse shaking the earth. A whisper rose from it, old as the mountain. Do you speak for the shadows? Aiko trembled. I listen to them. Listening is speaking. Listening is knowing. What are you? She asked. Something sealed. Why sealed? Because I was too loud. The heart pulsed violently. Shadows rushed to shield her. I can't give you a voice, Aiko whispered. You already have. The roots tightened. The hum rose to a roar. Go, it whispered. Before I remember why I woke. Aiko fled. The shadows guided her safely back. Higher up the mountain, the trees parted just enough to reveal a bend in the path. From behind it came soft crying. Is someone hurt? Aiko called. The shadows convulsed, terrified. One word formed in the dirt. No. Aiko rounded the corner anyway. A woman knelt beside an old pine, hair long and black, shoulders shaking. Ma'am? The woman turned. She had no face, just smooth, pale skin, blank. She stood too quickly, movement wrong, fluid like water poured upward. Her voice scraped out of nothing. Give me face. Aiko stumbled back. The woman advanced. The shadows swirled protectively. Aiko raised Yamamba's bone comb. Light rippled through the shadows. The faceless woman recoiled, trembling violently, then dissolved into mist. Aiko fell to her knees, shaking. The shadows wrapped around her gently, comforting. I'm okay, she whispered. The torii gate. At last the trees thinned. A stone ledge stretched before her, overlooking a vast valley drowned in silver mist. The sky was starless, moonless. A torii gate rose at the far end of the ledge, old, cracked, wrapped in vine and prayer papers too worn to read. Beyond it, stairs descended into darkness so absolute her lantern light could not enter it. A whisper rose from below. Come closer, dusk child. Aiko froze. Who are you? She whispered. The darkness shifted, smiling without a face. The one Yamamba fears. The shadows recoiled violently. Aiko clutched her lantern to her chest. The voice softened, hungry, coaxing. I have been waiting for you. The wind died as Aiko stood before the ancient torii, the lantern trembling in her hands. The mist thinned into strands that drifted around her ankles like wandering spirits, but the air beyond the gate was unnaturally still, as if even the mountain was holding its breath. The torii was enormous up close, its pillars cracked and covered in moss. Faded prayer papers clung to the wood, their ink nearly lost to time. The arch overhead felt less like an entrance and more like a warning. The shadows around Aiko gathered tightly, trembling. Aiko swallowed. It's okay, she whispered. I'm here. But even she wasn't sure. The voice from below rose again. Soft, cold, curious. Come, dusk child. It echoed not in the air but in her bones. Aiko stepped forward. The shadows surged to block her, forming a dense black barrier. They were terrified. Aiko stared at them. I have to go. Yamamba sent me. The shadows shook violently, disagreeing. But the comb in her hand warmed. Aiko looked down at it. A faint shimmer pulsed through the bone. Yamamba's silent blessing. The shadows stilled. Slowly, reluctantly, they parted. Aiko took her first step under the torii. The world changed instantly. The stairway that breathed. As she crossed beneath the arch, The air grew cold enough that frost bloomed on her sleeves. Her lantern dimmed to a flicker. The shadows around her shivered. A stone stairway dropped into darkness before her. It curved downward into a cavern that swallowed the lantern light. Aiko exhaled and began to descend. With each step, the mist thinned, the warmth faded, the sound of the wind vanished entirely. By the 10th step, her breath fogged the air. By the 20th, the shadows pressed close like frightened children. By the 30th, Aiko froze. The stairway ended. Not in a floor, not in a landing, but in a vast cavern, black as ink, silent as sleep. Her lantern revealed only one thing: a door, the door without walls. It stood alone in the darkness, an old wooden door, carved with spirals that pulsed faintly like veins. It was not attached to any wall. It floated an inch above the ground, swaying gently as though moved by a wind no one could feel. Aiko stepped closer. The shadows clustered at her feet, as if anchoring her to the world. Her lantern dimmed further. The door whispered. Yes, whispered. Not words, but breaths. Inhale. Exhale. Slow. Ancient. Alive. Aiko lifted her free hand and felt the air near it. Cold. Too cold. Who are you? She whispered. A breath answered her, slow and deep. Aiko's heart pounded. Why did you call me? The door shuddered. Then a familiar voice drifted from behind it. Her mother's voice. Aiko. Aiko staggered backward. And no, that's not real. Aiko, come here. The voice was perfect. Warm. Gentle. Aiko trembled. She knew the truth. Her mother had died long ago. The shadows rose protectively. Stop using her voice, Aiko whispered. The cavern hummed. Then the voice cracked, becoming something deeper, colder. Open the door. The shadows jerked in terror. Aiko raised the comb Yamamba had given her. I'm not opening anything unless you tell me what you are. Silence. Then, a soft knock from the other side of the floating door. A second knock, slow, deliberate. Then a whisper. I am the one forgotten by the mountain. Aiko swallowed hard. Why sealed behind a door? A pause. Because my name became dangerous. A chill shot up her spine. What's your name? She whispered. You would not survive it. The shadows pulled at her sleeves, begging her to turn back. Aiko stepped closer. Why do you want me? Because you listen. Her throat tightened. Did you wake the faceless woman? The heart of embers? The shadow of names? No. Aiko blinked. No. I woke nothing. They woke because you climbed the mountain. Aiko's skin prickled. Me? You carry dusk in your bones. Light and shadow both. You are a boundary made living. I didn't ask for that. You did not need to. The door pulsed. Aiko? The voice whispered. Open this door, and I will tell you what Yamamba fears most. The shadows panicked. Aiko steadied herself. Why does she fear you? Because she knows I cannot lie. The truth in the dark. Aiko's breath hitched. Tell me. Come closer. She took one step. Another. Now the carvings on the door glowed faintly. Eyes, mouths, hands, all twisted as if struggling to escape. Aiko whispered, Tell me, Yamamba is dying. Aiko froze. No. All ancient things end. She brought you to the mountain because she does not have long. She needs a successor. I'm just a girl. You walked paths that kill grown men. Aiko's chest tightened. If Yamamba dies, the mountain loses balance. Old things crawl out. Hungry things. No, no, please. Open the door, the voice coaxed. And I will tell you how to save her. The shadows screamed silently. Aiko pressed her hands to her ears. Stop! The mountain chose you, the voice whispered. Not Yamamba. Not me. The door throbbed. Aiko trembled. Please, why me? Because only someone who fears the dark and still walks into it can rule it. Aiko's breath shook. Her lantern dimmed. Her comb glowed. Her shadows wept. And Aiko reached for the door. Aiko's fingers hovered inches from the ancient door, her breath forming pale clouds in the frigid air. The shadows around her writhed and twisted as though trying to hold her back, but something greater, older, was pulling her forward. The lantern flame flickered weakly, as if begging her not to open what waited behind the wood. Aiko whispered, If Yamamba is truly dying, then I have to know. The wood rippled beneath her hand like living skin. She touched it, and the world shattered. There was no creaking hinge, no dramatic burst of wind. Only a soft inhalation, as if the mountain itself were drawing breath after centuries of holding it. The door swung inward. Darkness spilled out, not like night, but like ink, dense, fluid, heavy. It slid across the stone floor, curling around Aiko's ankles, cold enough to burn. The shadows around her recoiled in terror, but the darkness from the door did not attack. Tasted her. A low murmur vibrated through the cavern. Dusk, child, come. Aiko clenched her lantern. The flame shrank to a pinprick, as if it feared being swallowed whole. But she stepped forward, and fell. She did not fall far, only into another world. The darkness softened into ground beneath her feet. Aiko staggered upright, lifting her lantern. She stood in a vast chamber lit by no sun or flame. Instead, the walls themselves glowed faintly. Runes etched deep into the stone pulsed like slow, massive heartbeats. Shadows dripped from the ceiling like black water. They slithered across the floor, retreating when Aiko approached, as though they recognized her and yet feared her presence. Aiko whispered, "Where am I?" The answer came from everywhere at once. In the place where the mountain remembers itself. Aiko shivered. "Are you the mountain?" she asked. "No." The voice was softer now, calmer. "I am what the mountain keeps imprisoned. What Yamamba sealed before she was Yamamba." Aiko's breath caught. "You mean she wasn't always?" "She was once like you." The chamber trembled, curious, fearful, listening to what others ignored. Aiko clutched her shawl. "Then why did she seal you here?" A low rumble rolled through the chamber. Not anger, amusement. Because she feared hunger. The stone beneath Aiko's feet cracked gently, as if stretching after long slumber. "Hunger for what?" she whispered. "For recognition. For voice. For shape. I was not born evil. I was born unfinished." Aiko swallowed hard. "What does that mean?" "It means I needed a vessel." Before she could respond, a figure began forming out of the darkness ahead. The shadow that wanted to be human. It rose slowly, like smoke reversing direction. At first it was only a shape, humanoid but flickering, unstable. Then features began to appear. Not real ones, impressions. A hint of a woman's silhouette. Long hair made entirely of shadow. Skin like liquid ink, shifting with every breath. Aiko stepped back instinctively. The shadows around her curled defensively. The figure paused, as though letting her look. "You wanted a face?" Aiko whispered, remembering the faceless woman. "No," the shape answered. "She wanted what I am denied." The darkness rippled. "I do not want a face. I want form, presence. Voice that does not depend on stolen memories." Aiko's heart pounded. "Why me?" "Because your shadow is not loyal to the living or the dead. It is loyal to your will alone." Aiko clenched her fists. "I don't want to be anyone's vessel." The figure tilted its head. "Good. Neither did Yamamba. But she chose." "Chose what?" A new voice echoed behind her, weak, trembling. "Chose to bind herself." Aiko spun around and gasped. She stood at the far edge of the chamber, her green kimono torn, her long black hair now streaked with gray. Her steps were slow, unsteady. "Yamamba!" Aiko cried, running to her. But Yamamba lifted a hand, stopping her. "You should not be here," she rasped. "I had to know the truth," Aiko pleaded. Yamamba's eyes softened, even weakened. They held centuries of storm and stillness. "I wanted to buy time," she whispered. "Time to teach you. Time to help you choose." "Choose what?" Aiko begged. "To be the next guardian, or to free what sleeps here." The shadow figure flickered, amused. "I am tired of cages, Yamamba," it said. "And I," Yamamba whispered, "am tired of holding the key." Aiko reached out to her, but Yamamba's legs buckled. Aiko caught her just before she fell to the stone floor. Yamamba's breathing was shallow. Her skin felt cold, too cold. "No, no, please," Aiko's voice cracked. Yamamba's hand cupped Aiko's cheek. "You must listen not to fear, but to truth." Aiko's vision blurred with tears. "I don't know the truth." Yamamba's fingers trembled as they traced Aiko's jawline. "You do," she breathed, "because you walked the mountain and did not break." Her voice grew softer. "You faced the forgotten, the faceless, the heart of embers." She closed her eyes. "And you listened." A deep groan rippled through the chamber. Dust fell from the ceiling. The runes on the walls brightened. The shadow being spoke. "She is dying. And when she dies, the seal she built with her own body dies with her." Aiko held Yamamba tightly. "There has to be another way." "There is," the being said. "Open your shadow. Let me shape myself through you." "No!" Aiko shouted. The cavern trembled again, stronger this time. Cracks spread across the floor like dark lightning. The shadow being stepped closer. "You pity the forgotten. You comfort the afraid. You touched the old names without flinching. You can contain me." "I don't want to contain anything," Aiko cried. "Then watch the mountain starve." The voice hissed. Aiko felt Yamamba weakening in her arms. "Listen to me," Yamamba whispered weakly. "I became a guardian because I chose to be, not because I wanted power, but because I wanted balance." Aiko looked into her fading eyes. You carry dusk, Yamamba breathed. You carry both. Aiko swallowed hard. I can't do this alone. You will not, Yamamba whispered. Your shadows will follow. A crack thundered so loudly that Aiko flinched. The chamber shook violently. The mountain remembered hunger. The seal was failing. The shadow being spread its arms. Time to choose, dusk child. Aiko lowered Yamamba gently to the ground and stood. Her lantern flickered. The comb glowed faintly. The shadows rose behind her like wings. Aiko breathed deeply. If she made the wrong choice, Yamamba would die. The mountain would fall. And whatever had been sealed here would roam free. But if she made the right choice, she stepped forward. I choose. Aiko's fingers hovered inches from the ancient door, her breath forming pale clouds in the frigid air. The shadows writhed at her feet, terrified, but something older and deeper pulled her forward. Lantern light struggled against the darkness as the mountain trembled beneath her. If Yamamba is truly dying, then I have to know, she whispered. She touched the door, and the world shattered. The door opens. There was no creak, no blast. Only a slow inhalation, as if the mountain itself breathed after centuries of silence. The door swung open. Ink darkness poured out, thick and cold, tasting the air, tasting her. Dusk child, the voice murmured. Come. Her lantern shrank to a spark, but she stepped forward and fell. She landed on solid stone. The chamber glowed faintly with runes pulsing like ancient heartbeats. Shadows dripped from the ceiling like water, retreating when she approached. Where am I? Aiko whispered. In the place where the mountain remembers itself, the voice answered, from everywhere at once. A figure formed, smoke rising backward. A woman shape of shifting ink, trembling and unfinished. You wanted a face, Aiko whispered. No, the figure said. The faceless woman wants what I am denied. I want form, voice not stolen, shape not borrowed. Aiko stepped back. Why me? Because your shadow obeys only your will. Then I won't be your vessel. Good, the figure said. Neither did Yamamba. Yet she chose to bind me. A rasping cough echoed. Chose to bind herself. A weak voice murmured. Aiko spun. Yamamba! The old witch staggered from the darkness. Her green kimono torn, hair streaked with gray. Aiko caught her before she fell. You shouldn't be here, Yamamba whispered. I had to know. Yamamba touched her cheek. I wanted time to teach you, to help you choose. Choose what? To become guardian or release what sleeps here? The shadow being flickered. She is dying. When she dies, her seal dies. The mountain will hunger again. No, Aiko cried. She held Yamamba tighter. There has to be another way. There is, the being said. Open your shadow. Let me form through you. No! The chamber shook violently. Cracks spread, glowing red. You pity the forgotten, the being said. You comfort the afraid. You touched old names without breaking. You can contain me. I don't want to contain anything. Then watch the mountain starve. Aiko looked desperately at Yamamba. Listen, Yamamba breathed. I became guardian because I chose balance, not power. A deep crack thundered overhead. You carry dusk, Yamamba whispered. Both light and shadow. You will not be alone. Your shadows will follow. The mountain roared. The mountain roared. The seal was failing. The being spread its arms. Time to choose, dusk child. Iko rose slowly, lantern flickering, comb glowing, shadows rising like wings. She stepped forward. I choose. Light exploded. Iko raised the comb high. Shadows circled. Runes blazed. Wind roared. She faced the shadow being head-on. I choose to bind you, she said. Not in me, not in Yamamba, but with the mountain, with my shadow, on my terms. The being froze, then smiled, truly smiled. A contract, it whispered, balanced. Shadows surged upward. Light flared. Runes carved themselves through the air. Iko and the being extended their hands. Their fingers touched. Darkness poured into light. Light folded into darkness. Iko cried out, but not in pain. In becoming. The being dissolved into 1,000 strands of black silk, flowing into Iko's shadow, which deepened, strengthened, steadied. When the last strand vanished, the mountain fell silent. Iko gasped for breath. Yamamba stirred, color returning to her cheeks. You, she whispered, awestruck. What have you done? What needed to be done? Iko said softly. The cracks closed. The glow faded. The chamber warmed. Yamamba stood shakily. You heard the mountain. And it heard me, Iko said. You are dusk, Yamamba whispered. The balance between. I don't want to replace you. You are not, Yamamba said. You continue what must never end. Her form shimmered. Mist caught in moonlight. Please, Iko whispered, voice cracking. Don't go yet. I will remain, Yamamba said. As long as the mountain breathes steadily. And now it breathes because of you. Her hand touched Iko's one last time. Warm, grateful, eternal. Then she faded into mist. Iko fell to her knees as shadows curled around her in a grieving embrace. I'm still here, she whispered. We know, the shadows answered. Ascent into morning. Iko climbed upward through the cavern. The torii glowed with morning. Fog parted. Shadows followed her, not as fearful things, but as companions. At the archway, dawn spilled across the stones. Iko stepped into the light. The mountain breathed. Below her, the village shone like scattered stars. Iko whispered, I will protect you. The shadows bowed. The trees swayed. The mist lifted. And the mountain hummed with new memory. Iko began the long walk home, not as a frightened girl, but as the guardian of shadows. Thank you for listening to Sleep with Myth.